All right. Hello, everyone. This is Holly Chantal, the president of the Land of Brand, and your lead Mad Brand Scientist. You have reached the LOBoratory, which is the Land of Brand laboratory, where we talk about different topics in branding and basically, experiments to grow your business, share your message with the world, and build the business of your dreams. If you've never joined us before, we meet every second and fourth Wednesday of the month at noon Eastern Time, and our topics typically come from either experiments that I'm trying in the Land of Brand and I want to share with you, tools and recommendations of resources that we use as a Land of Brand, and questions from you. So today's question is actually from a client about sales conversations. And before we start talking about that, so just so you know, membership is free. If you go to thelandofbrand.com and click on free webinars, you can actually register right there for reminders. And replays are on the blog, but I always love to see you guys live because I can answer your questions real time, as well as get your take and your feedback on the topics of the day. So while we're going, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A box and or chat amongst yourselves as you are listening and things come up. So today we're talking about sales conversations that you can feel good about and that actually get prospects to say yes. So today's topic came from a client who I recently worked with around her message and strategy and gave her some ideas for how she could start expressing that message on their website. And what's happening is she's getting calls of prospects that are thinking about working with her, but she's not really sure what to say on those calls and how to communicate her brand in a way that can get them to say yes. So her question was, how do I use this for my sales conversations? So to basically give her a really good long answer, we scheduled the LOBoratory today, where I'm really going to walk you guys through, and she can watch this as well, for how to structure your sales conversation in a way that feels really authentic, in a way that does not make you feel icky, and that you can really share your message and your brand with more people and make sales conversations just one more way that you're sharing your passion with the world. So we want these to be fun and profitable. So our topics of the day are why everyone hates selling. So we're going to get kind of down into, what's the real problem here with feeling like you're salesy. The difference between a free strategy session and a sales call and how you combine them, because it changes how you think about these calls when you're calling them strategy sessions or sales calls. And then I've worked with a lot of coaches over the last few years that, it's always a question, do you give a free coaching session? And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then last but not least, of course, the formula for the easiest sales conversation that you will ever have. Oops. So selling sucks for a variety of reasons. For one, if you're thinking about sales as being sales, then you're probably thinking about that you have to convince someone to buy from you. You have to overcome objections, assume the sale, all of those sales training pieces that you've received maybe in your corporate job or what books you've been reading. It just doesn't feel good for most of us because most of the people that are in my community, we started our businesses because we have this passion for what we do, and we really stand for something, and we want to make an impact on the world that is so much bigger than ourselves. We're not in it to squeeze every dime or dollar out of people. We're not in this because we need to convince people that we're needed. So it doesn't feel very good when you're thinking of sales in that way. And the other thing that sucks is that anytime you're having a sales conversation or you're talking to someone about hiring you, you're going to end up with rejection at one point or another, unless you have a 100% close rate, which kudos to you if you do. You're going to end up with rejection. And when you're so passionate about what you do and it really comes from the heart, that kind of rejection you take it very personally. You start to feel like maybe you did something wrong, you said something wrong, or maybe your idea isn't good. And these are all kind of sucky things to have to think about. So our intention is to kind of get this ick and sucky feelings out of inviting people to work with you, and make it a way for you to share your passion and have fun. So it doesn't have to be icky. So a lot of you guys are coaches. Obviously I don't only work with coaches, but many of you are. And in this particular case, the client that I was working with is a coach. So I want to invite you to think about, what do you do on a coaching call? For one, you ask questions to identify your client's problem. So, coaching calls are all about asking questions and listening to what they're telling you, as well as what is underlying what they're telling you. You help them identify and choose a possible solution. So you're asking them questions about what possibilities do they see, what actions could they be taking. You ask them, will they commit to that solution? So if they come up with a plan that's like, sounds really good, well, will you commit to doing that? And then you hold them accountable for doing that, for taking that action. A sales conversation is very similar. You're going to ask your prospect what problems they're having right now. What challenges are you facing that caused you to sign up for the session with me? Identify. Never mind. We're not talking about the structure yet. Help them identify possible solutions. So what are ways that they could solve this problem? Obviously, your solution is included in that, but it might not be the only solution. And then you ask them if they want help with the solution. So do they want your help in bringing that to fruition? And then you follow up. You hold them accountable. So the steps that you're going to be going through when you're talking to a prospect are very similar to someone that you're already working with. Basically what you're doing is you're helping them make a decision. You're guiding them so that they really see what the issue is they're facing, see what the possibilities are for how they could solve that, and then make a decision on who they're going to hire to do that. And it's not always going to be you. When you're having this conversation, most of the time it will be you, but sometimes you're not going to be a good fit. And you're going to know this, they're going to know this. And when you stay in integrity with yourself and don't take on clients that you know are not going to be ideal, you're going to be doing them an even greater service, and you're not going to feel icky because you're just exchanging time for dollars, even though you're not really going to enjoy the work or they're not going to get the results. So we want all of this to be very much in integrity with how you want to show up in your business and your brand. So let's talk about the actual formula. So how do you have a sales conversation? So the first step is just to ask questions and listen. You're going to be taking notes, and really what you want to do is kind of open up with them what's really going on. So ask them, what is their big vision and what are their goals? So the first two questions here are interchangeable. I usually lead with the challenges. So what challenges are you experiencing right now, or what's going on right now that caused you to want to sign up for the strategy session? Why were you looking for my website? And what's going on? What's holding you back? What are you struggling with? What do you want help with? Those are all different ways you can ask that question. And then we talk about, what is their big vision? So if you were to solve this problem, what would that look like? Or what would it look like if you didn't have this problem anymore? What if I were to wave a magic wand right now and you could literally have anything you want? What would that be? And this gives me an idea of what it is. Well, for one, it's what do you want? And so I know, is that something I can even help them with, or is that something that someone else would be more suited for? You'd be surprised how many people come to me and they're asking for social media or search engine optimization or things that I don't have on my website that I even do. And I'm not always the best person for them, so then I can refer them to who would be. But most of the time, the way this question goes is that they paint this wonderful picture of exactly what you want for your clients. Exactly, if you're they're coming to you through your website. They've probably stalked you, reading your blogs, looking at your services, all of that. So they have a good idea of what you do. And when they start to explain their vision and what it is they want and what their goals are, and you start to get excited with them. And this is a really good feeling. And when you start to get excited with them, your energy goes up, their energy goes up, and you start to you can kind of nerd out a little bit together. So this is a really exciting point. Knowing what it is they really want, and when you start to really feel like you can help them with that, get excited. Don't what I used to do is I would start getting hesitant. I almost fall in love with my prospects, where it's like I'm really afraid they're going to reject me because I'm so in love with this project and I want to work with them so bad. Like if they say no, I'm going to be crushed. But now I just allow myself to get excited and not be attached to the outcome. If they say no because it's not a good fit or it's not the right time, that is okay. There will be a time when it is right. You also can ask them, what have they tried already? So this is your vision. These are the challenges you faced. What have you already tried to solve this? Or have you tried anything yet? Am I your first stop? And ask, well, why do you think those things didn't work? So if they told you that they've already hired someone that does what you do. For me, this happens all the time because I often work with people after they've hired designers or hired branding people or hired business coaches, and they still didn't get the result that they wanted. So I'll ask them, why do you think that is? Because a lot of times this will reveal, again, whether they're a good fit for you or not. Could be because the particular business they were working with didn't have the structure that they needed, or they didn't live up to their promises. Like it could be things that had to do with fit, like they need a particular type of structure. It could have to do with the business just really wasn't in integrity. Like I hear a lot of people say that I started this project and then the person disappeared on me. And then sometimes it might be like they know that it had to do with them, like they were just not in the right time in their life, or they just wasn't really motivated or that kind of thing. And you can ask them, what has changed? So if there's any red flags going up here where you're like, oh, I'm not really sure I can help this person if that's gonna keep happening, like they're still in that time in their life or whatnot, you can ask them what's changed. What makes you think that this time it's going to be the right solution? And also, what type of structure do you need in order to be able to follow through? Or, just answering those things that come up and what hasn't worked before will give you a lot of information about this person, how you can help them, and how and by talking about that, they'll start seeing how, like, one, you really care about them, and two, how you're different from the person that they worked with before, or the solution that they've already tried. Maybe they didn't work with a person. Maybe they bought a home study program, or they just were kind of doing the DIY thing. So just by having this conversation, you're really helping them uncover what is really going on for them, and so that they don't repeat that same MO and keep going in that pattern. So again, you guys see how the sales conversation is actually helping someone? Don't you feel good about that? And then ask them, what would the ideal solution look like? So what I like to ask is, so I always say waving the wand. I feel like I already said that. But if you were to have anything you wanted, what would your ideal solution look like? Like, what would be the type of support you'd need, or what you would want help with in order to get to where you want? Like, what does that look like for you? And a lot of times, they'll describe your program right there because, one, they've been reading your site, or two, you're just so darn good at what you do that your program is perfectly suited for them. And so that's why this question is really important, because a sales conversation is not always about just driving home what your programs are. Basically, the way someone goes through making a decision is, first they're aware of the problem. They start looking for solutions. They start, becoming aware of different solutions, and then they have to choose between them. When they choose between them, this is usually the stage they're at. Like if you're to go through these stages in this sales conversation, this is the stage we're at. So challenges, they've become aware of what their challenges are. They're becoming aware of what the solutions are, so they're giving you different solutions. And now you're going to help them choose between those solutions. Oftentimes it's just one that they're talking about, and yours happens to be the perfect fit. But knowing the solution is that I need to paint my house and hiring the person to paint it, that's a different stage. So at this point, all we're doing is gathering information, talking to them, and getting a really good picture on what their challenges are, who they are, and whether or not you really think you want to work with them. Because then comes step 2. So if you think that your service or program or product, whatever it is you're selling, is a good fit for the solution that they described in the problem that they're having, you can ask them permission to talk about your program. So I know you said that if you could just have a website that communicated what you do right off the bat and it was attractive and professional and attracted the right people to you, that would be the world for your business. Well, I actually have a program that would help you do that. Would you like to talk about it? By asking permission like that, it kind of puts the ball in their court. You're asking permission, so you're not pushing anything on them. They're always going to say yes. No one signs up for a strategy session with you to say no when you're going to talk about their program. They've probably been wanting to ask this the entire time you've been on the phone, and it's the natural progression. But still, by asking, you're not being pushy. You know that they set up the call because they need you. It takes the pressure off of both of you so you don't feel awkward that you're going to start launching into a sales pitch, because you're not. And this is where you talk about your program. Or actually, no, that's step 3. So step 3 is to talk about your program. So when they say yes, this is where you talk about how you're going to work with them. This is where you talk about what the program is. Hold the word vomit, please. So this is not where you start talking about, okay, we will meet every 2 weeks for 30 minutes, and I'm going to ask you these questions, and you will have access to email from me, and da-da-da-da-da. That's how it works. I don't care about that yet. At this point, what you want to talk about is what the results they can expect are. You can mention some past clients' experiences. And if they're interested, only then will you talk about how it works, like the features. So what would this look like? So kind of going back to the conversations I have with websites, people that are looking for websites and brand strategy. I might say, so in step 2 we're asking permission. So I might say, you're looking for, how to talk about what you do. And if you were able to explain what you do really succinctly at networking events, you know that would just be the world for your business. I have a program that will actually help you do that. Do you mind if I tell you about it? Yes. Okay. So in my coaching, basically what I do is I work with you to find out what is that common thread that goes throughout all of your offerings and is really the message that you stand for in your business. So there is always something that underlies the reason why you do what you do, and you might not even know what that is. Once we can uncover what that is, then that message becomes a very easy way for you to talk about what you do. You can use this at networking events. You can use this on your website. You can use it for when you're creating other products and programs. And what it does is it starts to create consistency in your business so you can really become known for what you're doing. Does that sound like that would be of help to you? Do you see how I didn't talk about how it works at all, but really just kind of reflecting back to them what they may have already said in steps 1 and 2, in step 1 with all those questions that I asked, and really just telling them, what it is that they're going to be getting out of the program. This is their deliverable, their result. And then they might ask, okay, well, how does that work? And that's what we're going to talk about in step 4. So if you frame the program right, they're going to see this as the perfect fit because your program is designed for people just like them, because this is what you do, and you're also reflecting back to them the things that they've already said and saying them in your program. So it becomes like this really, they feel really heard. They feel like you're definitely the right person for them. They already had an inkling about that, otherwise they wouldn't have scheduled a call with you. But this step is really critical. you can, sometimes you might mention the investment here or leave that for the next step. It really depends on how the flow of the call is going. Usually I talk about the program first and then ask them, how does that sound to you? Do you have questions about anything that I've already talked about? Is there something missing for you, or just kind of getting information about how does this program sound like it's a good fit? Because sometimes they might have questions or hesitations that they haven't talked about yet, and you may have missed something. So that's why I like to kind of get, making sure that the program's a good fit before we start really getting into the nitty-gritty details of how many calls, how much does it cost, blah, 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 all that. So this is step 4. So step 4 is what I just said, questions. So do you have any questions about any of that? How does that sound to you? This is also where you talk more about how it works. So if they're interested in that program and in getting that solution from you, then you can start talking about, okay, usually the first question, at least for me, that they always ask is, okay, how much is that going to cost? Even though my prices are on my website, they always ask, what is the cost of that program? And I'll tell them, and this is also where we can talk about, there's payment plans, what's included, like, okay, well, let's talk about what this really looks like. So you're already interested, let's talk about, okay, this is how it's structured. You don't need to lead with any of that. Let them ask the questions to see what they really need to know in order to make a decision, because you don't want to overwhelm them with too much information. If you're spouting off all these details that might seem really important to you, but they're not really there quite yet, like they don't really care how long it's going to take or how many calls or whatever, you're kind of just adding to their confusion, and they're going to have a hard time making a decision. Those kinds of things are less important, because what's most important to them is getting the results. So getting that deliverable that you've already talked about, that's what they want. They're not going to care about how they're going to get there, as long as you promise that you're going to do it in that package. That's the information that they need right now. And this is also where you're going to hear any hesitations so that you can address them. So questions are always good, because if someone's asking a question, it's because they're really considering working with you. So answering these questions, don't feel like, so I'm trying to think of an example where like you might be put on the defense, or so someone asked me a question recently about, at this point we had already talked about how much time and what we're going to be covering, and so we had gone through a lot of the details, and she said, I don't see how that, how is that much time going to cover everything I need? And that was a real hesitation for her. She wasn't seeing the matchup between the time that we were going to be in the sessions versus all the things she wanted to accomplish. So this is a really good question. And for some people, it might, like at first I was kind of like, whoa, like it might put me on the defense a little bit, because it almost feels like they don't believe in your program, or they don't believe in you, because these things are very personal to us. But if you look at the bigger picture of what she's really asking, is she just wants reassurance that we will be able to deliver what we talked about. So I assured her that a lot of the work that we're going to be doing is in between the calls, and the calls themselves are really just for kind of taking stock, reviewing, and laying out the next steps. But between those calls, like literally, I'm going to be reading everything, writing you comments, giving you feedback, and doing a lot of other things so that you do have my complete and utter attention during this entire process. Because what it was for her was a project where we were really going to be writing a lot of website copy. Much easier to do off the phone actually than on the phone sometimes. So for her, that package, it wasn't about the time that we're on the phone. And I also assured her that if we need another hour to accomplish what we need, that's okay. Like, I'm not going to worry about it. My commitment to you is to get the deliverables that we've agreed to done. And when you can do that, it just relieves that hesitation. It relieves that that little red flag that's in her head. And if she didn't ask that question, then it would have been a no. So these are really good questions. Don't take them personally. Don't feel like you need to get on the defensive. Again, think about what is underlying that question, and making sure that you're reassuring them, and that on one hand, you're reassuring them, and on the other hand, you're also setting realistic expectations. Sometimes they'll ask a question and it'll be like, no, that's, we won't be able to do that during this program because, we're going to be spending so much time over here, and that's okay. Like a lot of people ask me if search engine optimization is included in the website packages because that's something that they've read is really important, and it is when you're doing a website. And, I used to, get really worried that when I answer no, that they're going to not hire me. But really, they're just wondering what the scope is. And whenever I say, I don't really specialize in search engine optimization, I do have a course that I give as a bonus that will teach you, the basics enough to be dangerous. But it's not a service that I offer. They're like, okay, that's fine. They were just curious, wanted to know. So don't make assumptions about why people that people are going to say no or that they're not liking your program. The fact that they're asking the questions means that they're really interested in working with you, and they just want to kind of get some of the fuzziness in their head out of the way. So step number 5 is the infamous call to action. So now that you know that they're interested, you've answered all of their questions. Just like a coaching call, this is where you ask if this is a solution they want to commit to. So how does this program sound to you? Is this something you'd like to get started with, or what is your time frame? There's a lot of different ways you can phrase that question. Sometimes what I do is say, so is this something you would like my help with? And that's just a really easy way of asking the question. It's not saying, do you want to buy this program, which can feel, again, a little salesy, but is this something that you'd like my help with? Like, does this sound like a good fit for you? And again, it's just the way you phrase it just doesn't create a lot of pressure for either of you, which is good. So what if you get hesitation? So sometimes you'll get to this point and they'll be like, yeah, I need to think about it. And all of a sudden their energy has completely shifted from being really excited to suddenly it's like, whoa, 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 slow down. So this is something that I'm learning, always learning. Being in business is always a self-development program, pretty much. But I'm going to share this, even though it's not something that I'm a complete expert in, but I'm working on, is being very, when you start to hear that hesitation, being upfront about it. So I'll ask them, it seems like your energy has changed a little bit. You were really excited and now you sound a little hesitant. What's going on? Like just kind of addressing the elephant in the room and just allowing them to express whatever that hesitation is or whatever that question is that's still lingering for them, that they might be afraid to ask because they think that they went over time or they're still a little confused, they're not really sure how to phrase it. When you take the initiative to ask them what's going on, it kind of opens up for them and allows them to actually talk about it instead of just getting off the phone with that uncomfortable feeling and trying to work on it on their own. Because a lot of times they're so excited because their gut and their intuition and everything is saying yes, 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 but then their logic starts going and their practical mind starts going and they start talking themselves out of it, even when you're on the phone. Even though they know that it's the right solution, you know that it's the right solution, their left brain is saying, oh, whoa, 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 we need to think about this a little more, and they'll start talking themselves out of investing in themselves, or out of taking the time, or whatever it is that's kind of holding them back. This is a good time to help kind of start addressing that. And if they aren't going to sign up right then ask them if it's all right if you can follow up in a certain time frame. So I usually ask, when would be a good time to follow up. Unless it's like a straight up, yeah, no, this isn't a good fit, which is pretty rare. Usually it's like it's just not the right time right now, or like there's something going on in their life, like they're moving, or financially, or just something's going on. And I ask them when would be a good time to follow up, and they'll usually tell you. Or you can suggest time. Do you mind if I follow up? So sometimes it might be that they need to talk to a spouse or whatnot, so I'll say, all right, I'll follow up with you on Friday if that's all right, if I haven't heard from you, or whatever. But either way, you want to set the time and date for when you're going to talk to them again, or when you're at least going to reach out by email. This holds you accountable, because you know that you've read that a lot of the missed opportunities for sales is because of no follow-up. It doesn't always happen right on that first conversation, especially depending on what your packages are. With websites, our packages are $10,000 plus. Getting on the phone with me one time you might not feel ready to make that kind of a commitment, because we're talking about working together for a few months. It's something that's going to affect your business for the next few years. Like, you need to make sure that this is the good decision for you. So I never try to close a sale on the first call. We always there's always some kind of follow-up in place. So depending on what your packages are and how rare to go people are, then it might this will look different for you. So let's recap. I don't see any questions. If you guys have questions, make sure you type them in the Q&A now while I'm doing this. Otherwise, I might sign off the call without seeing them. So sales calls can be fun if you're doing them right. So use sales calls as a way to connect with your ideal clients. You're going to learn a lot through this process when they're talking about their challenges, they're talking about their ideal solution. Write those things down, because those words they're using are things you can use in your marketing to attract more of them. It also helps you, find ways to describe your programs. If they're telling you, this would be if I could wave a magic wand, this would be my ideal solution. Make sure that your offering, it says that on the web page, that that's what you do, that's what the solution is. And again, you'll attract more people like them. By asking the right questions, your prospects will sell the program for you. So they'll actually talk themselves into it, because they are talking about their challenges and how much it sucks. They're talking about what it is they want. They're talking about what they've tried before and why it hasn't worked. And then they're telling you what the solution is. And that solution, if it matches up with your solution, they just told themselves exactly what they needed. So you actually don't have to do a lot of work, which is kind of nice. Because it's all coming from them and they're making the decision, and you literally are just guiding the conversation and having a conversation, which is a lot better than having a sales call. So when in doubt, shut up. So what this means is, don't keep talking. Don't give them the word vomit. Don't give them all the reasons why they should work with you, or don't give them all the features that they didn't ask for. All the logistics they haven't asked for yet, because they don't even know if this is what they want to do. So when in doubt, let them talk, and just respond to the questions that they have, instead of giving into that awkward silence and saying more. And last but not least, you don't have to be an icky salesperson to have a successful business. Yes, it is required that you make sales to be in business, but those sales calls don't have to be inauthentic. You don't have to feel like you're overcoming objections and assuming the sale and doing all those weird sales tactics that you're probably taught in your corporate life. Your sales can come from a very heart-centered approach, and can be just a way of you sharing your passion and making more of an impact in the world. So that is that. If you have any questions, you can type them into the Q&A box. Before I go over the questions, our next call is going to be August 10th at noon Eastern, and we're going to talk about what to do if your website gets hacked. So websites getting hacked is like a dime a dozen right now. It's happening constantly. And sorry, my phone is talking to me. It happens a lot. So no one's immune, and you want to know what to do when it does happen, so that you can minimize your downtime and not lose all the work that you've already done. So you can join me in a couple weeks for that. And if you want to learn more about how I can help you with your brand, whether that be your business or just figuring out your strategy, whatever, whether that be your website or figuring out your business strategy, that makes a lot more sense. You can email holly@thelandofbrand.com, and we can set up a time to talk. So I'm going to head over to the Q&A. Carol says, how do you organize your follow-up stuff? So there's a couple different ways. A couple of weeks ago, I did a LOBoratory call on Trello. If you want to look that up, it should be in the archive on the blog. So I've tried a few different systems. I used to just put the follow-up call in my calendar as a to-do, and then I started ignoring those because when I did that, they would just move to the next day and to the next day and to the next day, and I'd never actually end up following up. So mine, she mentioned that hers is kind of, she has ADD, so she kind of forgets or like just doesn't write it down or whatnot. For me, it's kind of like I get afraid that I get afraid of rejection sometimes. I'm a normal person. And so now what I do is I use Trello, and I have a board set up that has everyone that I've had a conversation with, and I put notes in on their card for what we talked about, kind of where they are at, what we left the conversation with, and then if they did want a follow-up within a certain amount of time, I have another category for that. So I basically move their card from call to follow-up later. I set a due date on it, which can also be synced to your calendar. And basically every week I go in and I look at who I'm supposed to call that week or who I'm supposed to email that week, and I just send out the follow-ups that way. It's more, I would guess that it's probably less so about being organized and more so about just making sure that you're taking the action. Because being organized, you can do it in a variety of ways. You can put it on your calendar. You can create a whiteboard that just breaks down, just set a reminder for yourself basically to follow up with people during certain time frames. Trello, I love. I use that for almost everything right now in my business. And yeah, I think that's it. It seems like there was something else I was going to say on that, but I don't remember what it was. So if you have any follow-up questions on that, let me know. Carol says, yes, the calendar method was not working for me either. Thanks for the alternative ideas. And she forgot about Trello. Awesome. Cool. And here is another question. This was actually sent in before the call. And I love this question. I'm actually going to steal this term. So Eliza asks, is there a Goldilocks secret? I'm going to steal that term. I tend to give people a lot of information out of thinking that if they just understood this thing, then logically they'd want to purchase it. And if I don't, I feel like I'm giving too little. I try to give a nugget and leave the gap where they still need my help, but I feel like I seem to be oriented around information. Maybe there's a different way to think. Yeah, so I think, and knowing Eliza, because she's a client of mine, you are a fantastic teacher. So oftentimes when we get into the part of the sales conversation where you're talking about the solution, you might start trying to teach them the solution or start teaching them like background info about what it is you do. Most of us are very natural teachers. That's why we're in the business that we're in, because we have just this expertise and all this information that we want to share, and we just want to get it out there to people. So this is totally natural. So the way you want to look at a sales conversation is you're not necessarily going to be teaching them. You want to be exploring what a solution would look like. So for example, so Eliza, her business is, she works with parents. Her website is consciousbaby.com, and she works with parents that are struggling with, they want to connect more with their babies, basically. Like she helps them create this natural, magical connection with their babies. And she also helps them, it's really hard to explain right now because I'm like trying to think of an example and explain her business at the same time. So one of the things someone might come to her for is if their baby isn't crawling properly. So let's just use that as an example. She also does a lot of motor skill development with teaching parents how to nurture their babies in a way that they develop really naturally and the way they should be, because a lot of the things we do in society are actually impeding our babies' learning and how their motor skills are developing. So someone might come to her because their baby isn't crawling properly. So in the sales conversation, she would talk about, what is the challenge? What would you like? What result do you want? What have you tried already? And so she'd be kind of uncovering in the conversation really what's going on here. And then it would be really tempting to say, okay, well, if you're doing this, it's causing this in your baby, and this is what's happening, and that's going to cause all these problems later in life, and da-da-da, so we need to solve this problem now. That would be an example of giving way too much information, because me not being an expert in what you're an expert in, I have no idea what you just said, and I feel like I need to go home and process that and figure out what's really going on here, versus if you said, they've talked to you about what they've already tried, and what their ideal solution would look like. If you just said, if you are looking, so if their solution was, I really just want someone to sit with me for an hour and watch my baby and what they're doing and tell me what it is that I need to do in order to help her start crawling. That's the kind of solution, that's how they would word it. You would just say, all right, well, I actually have a program like that where I actually do observe your baby and you with your baby, and I will help you identify what props you might be using or whatever words you use that could be impeding your baby's development, and give you steps to take so that they can start crawling normally in 3 to 6 weeks or whatever. Do you see how that's different than teaching them about what's actually going on, and instead you're just saying, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do exactly what you just said you wanted. Then when you're actually working with them, if it makes sense to teach them all the background information and all the jargon and the technical stuff, you can. It's not always necessary though. I don't have to know everything you know in order to get the result that I need. So hopefully this gives you that Goldilocks principle of knowing kind of what's just enough. So I think to answer your question, is there a different way of thinking? Yes. It's not necessarily about sharing information. It's about sharing, it's not about sharing information. It's about connecting what it is they want and what the challenges they're having to how you can solve those problems for them or how you can help them with those problems. Not necessarily, they don't need to know all of the science that goes behind it or all of that. So I hope that's clear. I know, Eliza, you said you probably weren't going to be on this call. You were going to watch the replay. But hopefully that helps. You can always email me a follow-up question if it does not. And her other question was, I think I might have answered this during the actual presentation. And I'm not seeing any other questions, so I'm going to answer this one too. What is it that prospectives actually want from me? You've mentioned that you've mentioned looking at the question they're asking versus the words they're really asking. So that's like with the challenge they're saying, but what might really be underlying it. But my question might be slightly different. What is it that people want or need in order to actually buy? So most of the time when someone has scheduled a consultation with you, they've already made the decision that they've already almost made the decision that they want to buy from you. And they usually just have some follow-up questions. But sometimes we get into overzealous mode and we scare them away by giving them too much information. So I think these two questions are actually linked. Unless you don't have any pricing on your site and they really have no clue what they're coming into, which I did check Eliza's site and she actually does have pricing on her site, so that's not the issue. Then most of the people that are contacting you should become clients basically. So what's probably happening is what they really need is they need someone to hear them, and they need to know that your solution is what they're looking for. So by asking these questions up front about what they're looking for, what they've already tried, and being able to frame why this solution is different and how it's going to help them, that's the information that they need. And like I said, always err on the side of not going into word vomit mode, just answering their questions and listening to them and reflecting back to them what they're saying in your answers. And that will help you have a lot more successful sales conversations. So I hope that I don't see any other questions. I don't see anything in the chat. So I hope that this was helpful for you guys. I'm looking forward to seeing you again on the 10th, where we're talking about what to do if your website gets hacked. So have an awesome rest of your week, and we will talk soon. Bye, everyone. Can't turn off the webinar. There we go.